A partial lunar eclipse in Taurus on November 19th is going to introduce us to a new cycle of Taurus-Scorpio eclipses, and it will set the tone for the next 18 months. I'm here to talk about it and break it down for each zodiac sign. My name is Anastasia. I'm a traditional Western astrologer specializing in natal and predictive astrology. If you're interested in booking a reading with me, there's a link down below. I run an Instagram page. I post videos every week, so if you're new to this channel, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave me a comment. So eclipses are a big deal, right? Like lunar eclipse, lunar and solar eclipses always happen on the new moon and the full moon. Lunar eclipse is the full moon on steroids. It happens when the sun, the earth, and the moon align in such a way where earth is between the sun and the moon, and the earth is blocking the light of the sun, preventing it from reaching the moon. So it has that potential, that potency of the full moon, bringing change, bringing endings, transformations, release. It also oftentimes comes with a feeling of crisis. You know, the past week leading up to the full moon, to the eclipse, has been really stressful, with Mars conjoining Mercury, squaring Saturn, dealing with the opposition to Uranus. There's definitely been a lot of like inner and outer tensions. So eclipses come in that moment when like the tensions are boiling over. And it is, you know, a dramatic shift. It's the time where the universe decides things for you. It's the karmic rebalancing. You cannot really control it. So the best advice anyone can ever give you when it comes to eclipses is to just surrender and trust that what is meant to be will be. You can expect feeling a lot more emotional, perhaps, you know, feeling more sad or actually even happier, because eclipses sometimes come with like really the happiest moments of your life. It sets the tone as well, right? Like for the next 6 months or even longer than that, because eclipses always come in cycles. You get 2 eclipses, and then the next 6 months you're getting 2 more eclipses, and then again in 6 months. And this is an out of sign eclipse because the nodes are still in Gemini and Sagittarius, but they're moving backwards, so they are very close to Taurus and Scorpio. And that's when we get out of sign eclipses, when the nodes might be like, you know, right on the border, and the eclipse is right on the border. Even though they are in different signs, they still create an eclipse. And so it's happening at 27 degrees Taurus on Friday, November 19th, 3:57 a.m. Eastern. And if you have placements in the late degrees, Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, or Aquarius, any fixed signs, it might affect you a lot more. But I think we all can expect feeling that like emotional, unpredictable, a little bit tense energy. So the fact that the nodes are still in Gemini and Sagittarius says that we still have some of the Gemini and Sagittarius energy to wrap up. And that's why we get a solar eclipse coming up on December 4th in Sagittarius. So this is kind of like an introduction. It's an introduction to that cycle. South node will be in Scorpio, North node will be in Taurus. So over the next year and a half, 18 months, we will need to release some of the qualities of Scorpio, and we will need to create more stability of Taurus. And when it comes to releasing, you know, Scorpio, like the darker vibrational Scorpio, has the tendency to be obsessive, maybe to hold on to the challenging emotions for too long because it's a fixed sign. It's possessive like Taurus, but possessive with emotional things. So you will get an opportunity to let go of some attachments, maybe destructive habits, maybe people in your life that are not supporting you, and slowly find ways to create new material beginnings. Of course, Uranus being in Taurus is asking us to be innovative with the ways we do our day-to-day life, you know, with the way we do work, for example, like the pandemic introducing a very different way of working, right? Like 9 to 5 is not a thing anymore. People work from home. There's been a realization that you can still be productive and successful, but you can do it from the comfort of your own home. So this will be a cycle of like creating new material beginnings. Like, what do you see your career being? Perhaps you can, create your own business. Perhaps you never thought that you can be an individual doing a spiritual work, but you can actually make that happen. What is your relationship reality like when you have to work in the same space and be a parent at the same time? Definitely a lot of changes that we will deal with in the next 18 months with Taurus and Scorpio. There are some supportive aspects. Basically, the eclipse is squaring Jupiter, and that is a positive promise. Jupiter is expansive. Jupiter is optimistic. Because of a square, there might be a tendency to be overly optimistic and take on too much or overextend yourself. Like, you may feel like you have the energy or you have the time to do something, while in reality you don't. So try to be careful. Jupiter is still good, even in a square, but you want to make sure you're focusing your luck and your energy on passion projects and things that truly matter. And you also want to be really innovative and experimental, because Venus is going to be trining Uranus at the same time, and Venus rules Taurus. So what Venus is doing is quite important to us too. So Venus being in Capricorn, currently about to go retrograde in a little bit, is all about your ambitions and your mark in the world. What is your legacy, right? And it's trining Uranus, giving you a spark of genius, a spark of insight, allowing you to think more freely, to just be more independent and, less controlled, while still processing slowly, because Saturn is right around the corner. Like, you cannot talk about Uranus without remembering that Uranus is still aspecting Saturn, and we're going to get another Uranus-Saturn square on December 24th. So you still have to move slowly, focus on long-term goals, pursue things with that dedication of the sea goat, but make sure you are open to change and, aren't afraid. I think eclipses can be quite tricky and people have feared them for a really long time, but practice trust, right? Try to practice trust that whatever happens is for your own good. And you can probably look back at your life in the past and see when things have happened and it ended up working out, even though in the moment it felt like the worst thing. So let's talk about the 12 rising signs. You can listen for your sun sign, but usually it's better if you listen for your rising sign. So if you are an Aries rising, this lunar eclipse is happening in your second house, which is all about your money and values. So when it comes to money, you can be finishing a certain project, a certain collaboration with other people. Maybe you're getting paid, maybe you're paying off a debt that you've taken on. Maybe you're letting go of a source of income, because second house is your finances, right? So there's a possibility of a change in your income. So this is, the North Node is in Taurus, meaning that there's still going to be a lot of growth in this area and a lot of abundance in the next 18 months. But first you need to release something. And whatever that source of income is, you are letting that go in order to bring something new. Venus is in the 10th, is encouraging you to perhaps pursue something creative, to find more joy in your work. My Aries rising friend is just found out that her roommate is moving out, so she now has an extra space in her apartment, and she's considering possibly turning it into a photo studio and becoming a professional photographer. So it's very much about what do you value, and how can you turn your values, how can you turn those things that make you joyful and happy into a source of income. So think about that. If you are a Taurus rising, this is happening in your first house with Venus being in the 9th. So you are going through some kind of reevaluation of your beliefs. Maybe you're moving, maybe you're changing. There could be some like legal changes, educational changes. Maybe you're graduating with Venus being in the 9th house. But an image you've had of yourself is dissolving, and it has been dissolving for a while now, because Uranus has been in your first house asking you to be free, asking you to be authentic and pursue things that truly, truly make you happy. Before you get there, there might be a certain identity crisis. You may feel like you don't quite know who you are and where you want to live or who you want to be. So it's okay. Don't be afraid. It's okay to be in that place and not necessarily see the answers right away. You're meant to go through it. It's like, birthing pains. But I think it could be useful to look back at your childhood, for example, or at things that have always brought you joy, and perhaps find ways to, in the next 6 months, start projects that deal with those things. You may encounter health problems, or a health issue that you have been dealing with may come to a close and finally complete. But whatever is happening, an old version of you, whether that be the way you used to dress. I actually know a Taurus rising. She just told me today that she's been buying clothes nonstop. So could be the way you used to dress, could be your habits. Maybe you used to smoke, but not anymore. Could be the way you used to present yourself in the world. Maybe you've introduced yourself a certain way, and now you want to, maybe you've always introduced yourself as like, hi, I work in finance. And now you will say like, hey, I'm a social media influencer. Something is changing, and there is more potential in the future for your personal growth, personal development, self-recognition, and just finding more confidence. If you are a Gemini rising, this lunar eclipse is happening in your 12th house, the place of spirituality, self-undoing, self-limiting thoughts, self-destructive beliefs, etc. It's also the place of things that happen to us that we do not really control. In general, we don't control what happens to us during the eclipse, but when it happens in the 12th house, even less so. So it may come with a certain loss for you. It may be a feeling of, losing something from the past, maybe an actual loss, but hopefully not. Maybe you're releasing a tendency to put yourself down and talk to yourself in a critical way. Could be a really beautiful time to pursue therapy and to talk to your therapist about all of the feelings that you're going through, as well as revisit how you talk to yourself, because it takes time, it takes effort to change those deep-seated patterns, right, in our brain. We have a tendency to either compliment ourselves or be super critical with ourselves. And I think for you as the Gemini rising, this might be a time to actually bring forth new habits and release the tendency to put yourself down or talk to yourself in a negative way. Listen to your intuition, pay attention to the symbolic messages you may be receiving, to your dreams. There may be some answers there. If you are a Cancer rising, this lunar eclipse is happening in your 11th house, with Venus being in your 7th house. So lots of changes in your friendships. Perhaps you are completing a project with a bunch of people. If you have been working on a group project, if you have been working for a large association, large company, this might be a time that commitment comes to a close. Maybe some of your friendships have been dissatisfying. Maybe that project has been dissatisfying and you may literally choose to walk away. Or you get recognition, right? Eclipses could go either way. There could be exciting times, like you complete a project, you get recognized, or there could be more challenging times, like a friendship breaks. There's also a possibility that a friend from the past may reappear in your life, or someone you have thought you're done with may kind of come back to you. It's a great time, I think, for you to reevaluate what makes other people in your life happy and what makes you happy, and how can you bring more joy into your life, and perhaps even find joy in working with other people, right? Like what kind of people you surround yourself with? Are they your friends that you can call in the middle of the night and tell them about your worries? Or do they judge you and second guess you and limit you? Perhaps it's time for you to shuffle those people around. If you are a Leo rising, this eclipse is happening in your 10th house, with Venus being in your 6th. So for you, the next 18 months will be very much about your professional growth and your career success. So if you have been feeling dissatisfied with anything, if you've been feeling like unrecognized, underappreciated, if you've been struggling with your boss, this could be a time of change, release. Perhaps you quit a job. Perhaps, you can get fired, but it doesn't have to happen. But like, there's definitely some kind of major change and release and letting go. It could be your job, could be your reputation. Venus being in the 6th house is also encouraging you to enjoy your daily routine more. And I think that's what the eclipse, the next year and a half of eclipses in Taurus and Scorpio will be about. Like, do you find joy in what you're doing? Because sometimes, work is not always enjoyable. Sometimes you see it as just clocking in and out, but it's where you spend most of your day, or like a big part of your day, something you think about a lot. So how can you make those things more enjoyable? How can you better your relationships with colleagues? How can you maybe eat better food when you're at work, or clear your space and create more comfortable, more secure sense when you are at your job? Don't be afraid to start new things. Professional, it is the time of professional new beginnings. But because eclipses take a while to unravel, you don't always know right away that, this is the right move. Just be patient and pay attention at what's going on in your life. If you are a Virgo rising, this lunar eclipse is happening in your 9th house, and Venus is in your 5th house. So Venus in the 5th is encouraging you to pursue creative things and add more romance in your life, and kind of connect with your inner child and find inner joy. And then the eclipse in the 9th house can bring change to your education. So maybe you are completing education, maybe you're letting go of a certain educational field for the sake of starting a new joyful career. Maybe you're deciding to study something that will be more enjoyable. Maybe you're going in a creative direction, right? There might be kind of a completion of education for the sake of a new education. There might be changes to legal matters in your life if you've been waiting for like a visa, or if you've been suing someone, or if you've been getting sued, there might be a completion there. As well as for people who are writers, or if you've been writing a book, the next cycle will be very much about you publishing and getting recognition. A Virgo rising friend has just recently finished a book. So how appropriate is it that the next, year and a half is about publishing, and also just kind of like expressing your knowledge in the world. This could be a part of that, right? Like, it's education, but it's also teaching. So what have you, the last year and a half was, eclipses were happening in your houses of career and the house of home. What have you learned over that course of time, and how can you now share it with the world? If you are a Libra rising, this lunar eclipse is happening in your 8th house, with Venus is in your 4th. I'm a Libra rising, so I'm just like thinking of it on a personal level. So there might be some heavy family karma that you're dealing with the 8th house. 8th house is death, and it's shared money, inheritance, any money you just share with your partner, with the banks. So financially, if we're talking about financial things, there's definitely a possibility of untangling yourself from some kind of commitment you had to other people, or paying off a loan, paying off a debt, releasing some kind of financial commitment, or because it's also the house of spiritual indebtedness to other people, or more emotional connection where we share karmic past and karmic issues with other people. There might be, the next year and a half might be very much about you learning to define, what is mine, what is yours, and like that maybe your familial drama and your familial debts do not define you. So I think it could be great to dive into psychology, to think about your fears and maybe rise above them. Or I've been thinking a lot about how like our wounds and our fears and our traumas are not always there for us to heal them or for us to get rid of them. Sometimes it's literally just about accepting that, yes, I have this fear, but it doesn't define me. I'm still going to go and do many things. So, focus on settling your psyche and accepting yourself and settling your financial debts. If you are a Scorpio rising, this full moon lunar eclipse is happening in your 7th house, with Venus being in your 3rd house. So it's a big deal, right? Like 7th house is relationships, business partnerships, any one-on-one contractual relationships you have with other people. So with the lunar eclipse here, you may be letting go of a relationship. You may be letting go of a contractual obligation. Like even if you've had roommates, right? Like you're finally moving off on your own, or you're getting married and there's a big change in your status and the status of your relationship. A chapter might be closing in your relationship that, maybe you've connected on a less intimate level, and now with the Scorpio Taurus energies rebalancing, you get a chance to connect on a more intimate, deeper level. Venus being in the 3rd too makes me think of you learning to communicate more openly and finding more joy in communication and finding more joy in the hobbies that you have and the skills that you possess, and perhaps your relationship changes with it. Like if you decide to write a book together with your partner, or if you decide to, pursue a hobby together, and maybe you communicate more clearly with them, with that communication growth coming from the 3rd house, leading to a change in a relationship. If you are a Sagittarius rising, this lunar eclipse is happening in your 6th house, with Venus being in your 2nd house. So Venus in the 2nd is really great for your financial pursuits. And so the eclipse in the 6th can actually bring release and change with your job. So perhaps, Venus being in the 2nd encourages you to find a job that brings you more money, to find a job that also makes you more valued, because 2nd house deals with value. So you can expect a change in your profession. Changes in the relationships with colleagues are possible, as well as health, because 6th house is like health and how we take care of ourselves and like things that befall us sometimes. So watch out for overexerting yourself. Watch out for doing too many things. I would also make sure you don't drive too fast or do exercise that is crazy, physically tough. So try to be kind to yourself. Maybe this eclipse is, because we're talking about Venus being the 2nd house of money and values, maybe part of it is you realizing that it's not all about the money, that it doesn't matter how much money you make as long as you have the inner peace and you choose to prioritize your rest time and finally add some of that to your schedule. Because as a Sag rising, you are ruled by Jupiter. You have a tendency to expand and take on too much. So maybe it's time to cut some of that down. If you are a Capricorn rising, this lunar eclipse is happening in your 5th house, with Venus being in your 1st. So Venus is in your 1st. You are rethinking your appearance, your body, your looks, your personal projects, and the eclipse happening in the 5th house represents a change in your creative pursuits, right? Like there might be a completion of a creative project. If you've been painting or writing a book or something, there might be a chapter closing there. 5th house deals with children. So for some of you, this may bring pregnancy, right? And Venus in the 1st house just tells you like, hey, you need to take better care of your body, or your body is about to change. So pregnancy is a possibility, if not right now, then over the course of the next 18 months. Giving birth, changes in the life of your child. If you are a parent with grown children, maybe a child leaves home or they start a new school and you kind of have to face the reality of them growing up. Watch out. 5th house has to do with fun, right? Like watch out for having too much fun and like pushing your body and your time and your well-being too far. If you are an Aquarius rising, this eclipse is happening in your 4th house of home and family, with Venus being in your 12th house. So the lunar eclipse in the 4th house can bring changes to your place of living. Maybe it's time to move. Maybe it's time to redecorate, renovate, redesign, do anything like that. It could also bring changes to your family dynamics, because Venus being in the 12th house kind of makes you face past relationship traumas, or maybe just kind of makes you ask, what are you kind of like, it's fourth house is safety and security. It's not always the literal home. And Venus being in the 12th is asking you to think deeper, to kind of like understand what makes you feel safe and secure, and perhaps revisit all the ways in which you limit yourself, because 12th house is the place of like self-imposed belief, like self-limiting things sometimes. So maybe this is the moment where you can revisit that, but then also look at how you interact with your family. Perhaps you sometimes hide behind your family and their needs, and instead of pursuing your own. This could be very much like releasing some of the past karma, releasing some of the past relationships, moving a relationship with parents to another level, like either letting go of that relationship if your parents are toxic, or maybe bringing more understanding to it. But I think it is about literal home, but it's also about, like I said, what makes you feel safe and secure, and perhaps trying to figure out if you have moved recently, right? Like what is missing in your home in order for you to feel at ease there. Maybe it's about buying a plant, it doesn't have to be super complicated. If you are a Pisces rising, this lunar eclipse is happening in your 3rd house, and Venus is currently in your 11th house. So eclipses in the 3rd can bring focus on your skills and your hobbies. And maybe you have been studying something and you are completing a course of study. Maybe you're choosing to go with your hobby and turn it into a source of income. Maybe you're thinking of starting a business, right? And before you do that, the lunar eclipse can ask you to perhaps take more classes or figure out what is missing in your life as far as those very tangible goals and very, structured, organized things. Because 3rd house is connected to business and skills, but it's also the daily schedule, like people you talk to, your daily commute, your technology. So perhaps there might be like changes there with technology, education, siblings, relationships you have with people. Perhaps you are just like revisiting the way you talk to people, but also revisiting what is currently in your life and what needs to be changed in order for you to move forward. There might be a crisis in your relationship with a sibling or a friend or your roommate, for example. Like if you haven't been seeing eye to eye, watch out for getting into ideological debates and trying to prove to them your point of view, because that very rarely, very rarely brings good results. So watch out for technology. Technology may break. Think of, like I said, upgrading your, car, your technology, your computer, and think of the way you communicate too. I think the next 18 months, having eclipses in your 3rd house can also just invite you to be more honest and more direct and more straightforward, because it's Taurus, right? It's an eclipse in Taurus, and Taurus knows what Taurus wants. Like Taurus, people are known for being, like, bring me food now or I'm gonna get pissed. Like they have their very strong beliefs. So I think it's about you owning your beliefs, because as a Pisces rising, you can be someone who is very sensitive to other people and perhaps like tries to accommodate other people. So think of how you can pursue your goals without sacrificing your needs for the other people in your life. So this is all I have. Have a safe lunar eclipse in Taurus, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye, guys.